The peace that comes after letting someone go doesn't arrive immediately. It sneaks up slowly, quietly, like morning light filling a dark room. And when it finally settles in, it feels so unexpected that it's almost startling. Because letting go is supposed to hurt forever, isn't it? That's what it feels like in the beginning. Like the weight will never lift. Like the sadness will be permanent. Like something essential has been lost that can never be replaced. But what actually happens after enough time passes is something nobody warns about. Something surprising. Something that feels almost like betrayal of the grief. Peace. Real, soft, genuine peace. My name is Annie, and I've let people go. Not dramatically, not with big confrontations or final speeches, just quietly. Through the slow realization that some relationships cost more than they give, that some connections drain more than they fill. That some people, no matter how much they're loved, need to be released. And every time it felt like it would hurt forever, but it didn't. Eventually, on the other side of the grief, there was peace. And that peace changed everything. The first time this happened, it was a friendship, a long friendship. One that had been important for years, but somewhere along the way it had turned, had become heavy. Every conversation left a weight. Every interaction required so much energy. So much careful navigation. So much walking on eggshells. So much managing of moods and reactions and constant drama. And for a long time, the belief was that this was just what friendship required. That relationships took work. That real friends stuck it out through hard times. But there's a difference between hard times and constant harm, between supporting someone through difficulty and being drained by someone who creates difficulty. And this friendship had crossed that line, had become something that took and gave back almost nothing except stress and exhaustion and the feeling of never being good enough. But letting go felt impossible, felt like failure, felt like being a bad person, felt like something that would hurt forever. So for a long time, the friendship continued past the point where it should have ended, continued through more hurt and more disappointment and more exhaustion, until one day something shifted, not dramatically. Just a quiet recognition. This isn't friendship anymore. This is just habit, and habits can be broken. The ending wasn't dramatic. There was no big fight, no final conversation, no explaining or defending or trying to make the other person understand, just a slow stepping back. Responding less, calling less, being less available, creating distance without announcement. And it felt terrible at first. Felt like the worst kind of guilt. Felt heavy and wrong and sad. But then something unexpected started to happen. The days felt lighter. The constant background stress started to fade. The mental space that had been occupied by managing that relationship became available for other things, for easier friendships, for peaceful solitude, for activities that brought joy instead of obligation. And slowly, so slowly it was almost imperceptible, peace began to settle in where heaviness had been. And here's what nobody tells people about letting go. The relief, when it comes, feels almost guilty at first. Like something is wrong for feeling better, like the grief should last longer, like peace is somehow a betrayal. That relief felt shocking, felt like it shouldn't be allowed, like a good person would still be sad, would still be missing the friendship, would still be wishing it had worked out differently. But the truth was, the missing wasn't for the friendship as it had been. It was for the friendship as it had once been, years before, when it was light and easy and reciprocal. That version was already gone long before the letting go happened, so the grief was actually old, had already been processed. The letting go was just finally acknowledging what had already ended, and with that acknowledgement came freedom, real freedom, the kind that fills the lungs, the kind that makes mornings feel fresh again, the kind that creates space for new growth. The friendship had been taking up so much room, so much energy, so much mental and emotional space, that its absence felt like a house with rooms suddenly available. Rooms that could be filled with better things, lighter things, things chosen rather than obligated. As the years passed, there were other lettings go, other relationships that needed to end. A family member whose constant criticism had been endured for decades out of obligation and guilt. A romantic relationship that had become more about history than actual connection. A colleague whose friendship had been maintained out of proximity but was actually exhausting. Each time, the pattern was similar. the long period of holding on, the guilt about considering letting go, the fear that it would hurt forever, the actual letting go, quiet and undramatic. And then, eventually, the surprising piece. The family member was particularly difficult. Family is supposed to be forever, isn't it? Blood is supposed to matter. And their criticism came disguised as concern, disguised as wanting the best, disguised as love. But love doesn't feel like constant judgment. Love doesn't feel like never being good enough. Love doesn't feel like walking on eggshells. And eventually, after years of trying to earn approval that would never come, after years of explaining and defending and trying to make them understand, there came a quiet recognition. This will never change. And continuing to engage is choosing to be hurt, over and over again. So the engagement stopped. Not with an announcement, not with a dramatic cutting off, just a gentle disengagement, shorter phone calls, less information shared, more boundaries, more distance, and they probably noticed, probably complained, probably told other family members that something was wrong, but there was no defense, no explanation, no trying to make them understand, just quiet distance. Just peace chosen over connection that consistently hurt. And the guilt was enormous at first. Family is supposed to matter. Good people don't give up on family. But what about giving up on self? What about the cost of maintaining relationships that damage? What about the price paid for keeping peace with people who don't offer peace in return? Those questions started to matter more than the guilt. Started to create permission. Permission to choose well-being over obligation. Permission to let go even when it felt wrong. Another memory returns to me now, the romantic relationship. The one that had been good once, really good, but time had changed it. Or maybe time had just revealed what had always been there but was easier to ignore in the beginning. The fundamental incompatibility, the different values, the different visions for life, the different ways of loving that never quite matched up. And there had been years of trying, years of working on it. Years of therapy and conversations and efforts to bridge the gaps. But some gaps can't be bridged. Some differences aren't compatible. Some loves aren't enough. Ending it felt like the hardest thing, felt like giving up, felt like failure, felt like throwing away years of investment and history and shared life. And the grief was real, was deep, was heavy. But underneath the grief was something else. Something that took a while to recognize, relief. Because the effort required to maintain the relationship had been exhausting, had been consuming, had been taking up so much energy that there was little left for anything else. And its ending, while sad, was also a release. But here's what most people don't realize until they experience it. Sometimes the relationship ending isn't the tragedy. Sometimes staying in it would have been the tragedy. Missing out on the life that was waiting on the other side, that would have been the real loss. The peace that came after was different than expected. Not immediate happiness, not instant joy, but a slow settling, a gentle lightness, the absence of constant tension, the absence of trying to force compatibility that didn't exist, the absence of performing a version of self that was tolerable to someone else. And in that absence, there was space. Space to remember who she was, space to discover what she actually wanted, space to breathe fully for the first time in years. And then, over time, something beautiful happened. Other relationships deepened. The friendships that had been neglected because all energy was going to the romantic relationship, those friendships had space again. Those friends got attention and time and presence. And they bloomed. They strengthened. They reminded her what reciprocal connection felt like, what ease felt like, what not having to work so hard felt like. And that contrast made clear how much had been lost trying to maintain something that was never going to work. There's something else I still think about often. The colleague friendship. The one that had been convenient, proximity-based, built on shared space more than shared values. And it had been fine for a while, had filled a need for social connection during work days. But outside of work, it became clear how little they actually had in common, how different their values were. How much effort was required to maintain the friendship, and how little was actually received in return. But ending a convenience friendship feels petty, feels small, feels like it shouldn't matter enough to be an issue. So it continued. Through awkward social events where there was nothing to talk about. Through favors asked and given that felt more like obligation than generosity. through a growing sense of resentment at the demands and the lack of reciprocity. Until one day, a job change, a new workplace, and the natural end of the proximity. And the friendship could have continued, could have been maintained through effort, through planning and reaching out and staying connected despite distance. But the effort wasn't made on either side, and the friendship just faded, stopped, ended without ending. And the guilt about that was mild, brief, because the relief was immediate. No more obligation, no more pretending to have more in common than actually existed. No more energy spent on something that had always felt more like work than connection. The peace that followed was immediate, was light, was simple, just the absence of something that had been taking up space. Space that could now be used for something else, or for nothing, for rest, for solitude, for friendships that felt easy and reciprocal and life-giving. The contrast made clear how much the convenient friendship had actually been costing. As time moved forward, a pattern became clear. Every letting go followed the same path. The long period of holding on, the guilt about considering release, the fear of permanent pain, the actual letting go, the initial grief, and then eventually the peace, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but always eventually peace, and not just the absence of conflict, not just neutral emptiness, but actual peace, lightness, freedom, space, energy, joy returning to places it had left. And with that pattern recognition came wisdom. Came the understanding that holding on isn't always love. Sometimes it's fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being a bad person, fear of making a mistake, fear of the pain of letting go. But staying connected to people who harm, who drain, who diminish, that's not love either. That's self-abandonment. That's choosing familiar discomfort over unknown possibility. That's accepting less than deserved out of fear of having nothing. But the nothing, when it came, wasn't actually nothing. It was space. And space is where new things can grow. New friendships, new connections, new versions of self, new ways of being, all of it impossible while still crowded with relationships that took too much and gave too little. The letting go created room, and that room was precious, was necessary, was the foundation for everything that came after. I remember another moment of recognition, looking around at the relationships that remained after the lettings go. And they were all easy, all reciprocal, all life-giving. All relationships where effort was matched, where care was mutual, where presence was wanted and appreciated, where being oneself was not just acceptable but celebrated. All of it possible because the relationships that required constant performance, constant management, constant energy, those were gone. Let go, released, and the quality of life was different, better, lighter, more joyful, not perfect, not without challenges. But the challenges came from life itself, not from the relationships that were supposed to be support systems but were actually additional stressors. The remaining relationships were refuges, were sources of strength, were places of rest and laughter and genuine connection, all because space had been made for them by releasing the relationships that were taking up room without contributing anything positive. The peace wasn't just internal, it was external too. Days felt different, easier, less heavy. Mornings without dreading certain phone calls, evenings without recovering from difficult interactions, weekends without obligatory social events that drained more than they filled. All of it just lighter, simpler, more aligned with actual desires and values and preferences. And with that external peace came internal peace. The constant background stress that had been there for so long it was almost unnoticeable until it was gone. That stress had been affecting everything: sleep, health, mood, energy, creativity, all of it suppressed by the weight of maintaining relationships that were fundamentally unhealthy, and all of it returning slowly as the weight lifted, as the letting go created space for well-being. There was also the peace of no longer betraying self, no longer pretending to be okay with treatment that wasn't okay, no longer accepting less than deserved, no longer sacrificing well-being for the comfort of others, no longer being small to make others feel big. All of that self-betrayal ended when the relationships that required it ended, and the integrity of living aligned with values, of treating self with the same care that was offered to others, of maintaining boundaries that protected rather than performed. All of that created a different kind of peace. A deep peace, a foundational peace, the the peace of being true to self. And then, sometime later, came another realization. The lettings go hadn't just created peace in the present, they'd also protected the future. Because those relationships, if maintained, would have continued to take and drain and harm, the cost would have accumulated, the damage would have deepened, the self-betrayal would have compounded. And the life that was being lived now, the lighter, freer, more joyful life, that would have been impossible. The letting go hadn't just removed something negative, it had made space for something positive, had protected what was trying to grow, had chosen future well-being over present comfort. That protection mattered. Mattered enormously, because life is long, hopefully. And the relationships carried, the people allowed close, the connections maintained, all of them shape that life. Shape its texture and its quality and its possibilities. And choosing carefully, choosing wisely, choosing to let go of what harms even when it's hard, that's choosing a better life. That's choosing peace. That's choosing self. Now, if someone is still here, still listening to these reflections about letting go and the peace that follows, that means something. That means this resonates. Means maybe there's someone in life right now who needs to be let go. Someone who's been held onto too long. Someone whose release would create the kind of peace being described here. And recognizing that is brave, is honest, is the first step toward the lightness that's waiting. And maybe, for anyone still here, there's value in acknowledging this in the comments, in saying something real. Something like, I needed to hear this today, or I've been holding on too long, or I'm ready to choose peace, or even just I understand. Because sometimes saying it, even to strangers on the internet, makes it real, makes it possible, makes it the beginning of change. So if this landed, if this mattered, leave a comment. Something honest, something real, something that acknowledges the courage it takes to let go and the peace that's waiting on the other side. The beautiful truth is this: letting go doesn't mean being a bad person. Doesn't mean being cruel or cold or heartless. It means being honest. Means recognizing what serves and what harms. Means choosing well-being over guilt. Means protecting the precious resource of energy and time and love. Means understanding that not all relationships are meant to last forever. That some are seasonal. That some are lessons, that some are simply mistakes. And that's okay. That's life. That's growth. That's wisdom earned through experience. And the peace that comes from that wisdom is worth it. Worth the guilt, worth the grief, worth the difficulty of the letting go, because peace is the foundation of everything else. Peace is what makes joy possible. Peace is what creates space for growth. Peace is what allows authentic connection with the right people. Peace is what protects against burnout and resentment and bitterness. Peace is what makes life livable, sustainable, beautiful. So if there's someone who needs to be let go, someone who's been draining and demanding and diminishing, someone whose presence creates stress instead of peace, someone who takes more than they give, someone who criticizes more than they celebrate, someone who makes life smaller instead of larger, they can be released. Not with cruelty, not with drama, just with quiet recognition that the relationship isn't serving anymore, that it's costing too much. That peace matters more. And with that release comes space. Space that will eventually fill with peace, with lightness, with freedom, with the kind of life that was always waiting but couldn't exist while crowded with relationships that shouldn't have been kept. The peace is real. The relief is real. The lightness is real. And it's waiting. On the other side of the letting go, on the other side of the guilt, on the other side of the fear, just waiting. Quiet and soft and gentle, ready to settle in and change everything. If these words brought comfort, brought recognition, brought permission to let go of what needs releasing, a like and subscribe would mean the world. There are more honest reflections here, more conversations about the hard, beautiful work of choosing peace, more reminders that sometimes the bravest thing is walking away. Thank you for being here, for listening, for staying to the end. That matters more than you know.